Well, as you can see, not a good start to schools reopening as far as inland provinces are concerned. So the 2023 academic year off to a very bumpy start. Equal education researcher Katherine Sutherland joining us on the show now. Katherine, good morning to you. I mean, it's astonishing to think just how badly this has been handled for many of the parents and many of the schools. I'm not even sure where to start. What is more infuriating, a lack of placements for pupils in Gauteng? I think it's over 1,000 still can't get into class. Those that can get into class, their parents won't let them because of the state of our schools. How are we here in 2023? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I think the education sector is one that is fraught with issues. It's very difficult to pinpoint one particular reason that we're here, but I think infrastructure is definitely one. It's a massive issue in terms of just creating enough space for the learners that we have, but also creating safe environments for the learners that we have. And I think the way that infrastructure has been given out to schools, there's a couple of factors at play. So firstly, I think budget is one of the big things in terms of our education sector being highly underfunded, both from a national perspective and from a provincial education perspective. And then we also have infrastructure delivery, which comes with all of the issues of procurement and the bureaucracy around that, in terms of things become extremely expensive when you have to go through so many processes, and it becomes incredibly drawn out. So school or provincial education departments end up having to make use of implementing agents who have infamously underperformed and get paid regardless of whether they perform or not. And then I think just in terms of, creating a safe, or valuing a safe infrastructure in school, I don't think it's taken seriously enough. There isn't as much urgency as is needed.
I think many people would agree with you, because once again, we're now at the start of a new academic year, so the focus is on the schools, the infrastructure itself. It's on this online application system. But once it's all sort of done and most parents have found a spot and everyone's calmed down, we forget about it again until this time next year. Here's the problem, and it's in your organization's name, Equal Education. There's nothing equal in a case like this. In fact, it's actually unequal education, isn't it? And it's very unfair for the pupils.
Yes, absolutely. It's incredibly frustrating for pupils and parents to have to fight to be in schools that have terrible conditions. It's very disheartening for them. But I think also we're seeing with the new Basic Education Law Amendment Bill, which is amending basic education for the first time in many, many years. What they're trying to do in that bill, one of the things they're trying to do in that bill, is criminalize parents and guardians for stopping learners from going to school. So, for example, this is a great way of explaining why that doesn't work, because parents have a right to say, my kid or my child cannot go into a physically unsafe environment, and I'm not willing to put them in an environment that endangers their lives. So, yes, I think it's incredibly important, and the way that we are approaching these things and the way that the government is approaching them is, really requires us to take a step back and figure out what our goals are and what we really value.
I suppose the problem, and there'll be some argument with that, Katherine, I'm sure you would have heard these arguments, is we can't keep on saying we have to step back and take a look as a government in our country, because we keep having the same problems every year. You and I have had the pleasure of talking for years now, and it always seems to be the same problem. Someone has to take the blame for this. I mean, there is talk of a cabinet reshuffle. Should the changes come from the very top? Of course, I'm talking about the Education Minister, Angie Motshekga herself. Is it time for a change at the top, do you think?
I think that's a very complicated question. I would maybe, there's blame to be placed in multiple places, but I'd say that, if a big change would happen, there needs to be greater regulation around ensuring that we tackle the biggest problems that we have. For example, something that is very easy to do, which would be incredibly useful, is to have a public information about which implementing agents are doing which projects, so that the public can hold the government and implementing agents accountable, or having a blacklist of implementing agents that have underperformed. So those are the kinds of things that I think would be incredibly useful. And I don't think necessarily reinventing the system is the way to go, in the sense of, we're changing faces, but not changing the actual sector or the things that govern the sector.
Yeah, you make a very good point around these implementing agents. I'm taking a note. I'm going to see if we can't follow up on that. Excuse me, Katherine, for clearing my throat. These implementing agents. I'm going to follow that up as well, but you make a good point. You can change all the faces, but if the system is broken, that is where the problem is actually coming in. Katherine, I'm going to say thank you very much, as always, for joining us. It's wonderful to hear from you, equal education researcher Katherine Sutherland, raising the issues that I think many parents are dealing with right now. But the question is, at what point do we stop having these conversations?